Good day, everyone. Welcome to the morning meeting where we'll ask the non-musical question, what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding, with Dan Turrentine, Sean Spicer, and myself guiding you through the day. And never forget the two-way community, such an important part of this program. Please, if you'd like to be in the conversation and you're here on the platform, raise your hand. Today is one of those days where if we don't get 3 new people, the program will be canceled. So if you like the show and you'd like to keep it on the air, please raise your hand. If you've never raised your hand on this program before, thank you for your attention to this matter. And thank you for watching on X or on YouTube, where you can't raise your hand to participate, but you can, with peace in your heart and the extension of presumption of grace to all, not put smack in the chat. So really, don't put smack in the chat. Hear me now, believe me later. Don't put smack in the chat. Sean and Dan and I, we're right about so much. We could hurt ourselves patting ourselves in the back. We could just replay yesterday's episode and see you got 3 basically modern day Nostradamuses here, letting you know what's going to happen before the rest of the world knows. We'll try it again today. It's a bit of a parlor trick.
I see a 7.
Exactly.
14.
Exactly.
29.
Are the lotteries still using those ping pong ball machines? I keep meaning to
I think Powerball does. There is
they still use it.
Drawing.
It seems like there should be something a little more electronic, a little less analog. In any event,
it's like the NBA draft. I mean.
lots to get to. And because our audience continues to grow explosively, let's fill you in. For those of you who don't know, this program is based on the Network News Division's morning meetings, where they gather folks from around the globe, from all their bureaus, run through the daybook, and then kick things around. But again, the surprise O. Henry twist, you get to participate as well. So if you'd like to be in the conversation, please raise your hand. All right, the daybook, like to the Batmobile. The president today at the White House, the Federalist is the new media pool, and the president has a cabinet meeting at 11. And as we all know, typically the cabinet meetings are talkaramas, where the president calls on different people. No Elon Musk today.
I was just going to say, yeah.
We'll see who's front and center, but that'll be live. Right now, mandatory prediction. Sean, will CNN and MSNBC take the cabinet meeting live? Yes or no?
Yeah, CNN, yes. MSNBC will VO it, B-roll, and say the president is meeting with his cabinet, but we won't take it today because it's normally a press conference that.
Right. All right. Dan, will CNN and MSNBC take it?
Yeah, wire to wire. Nothing else going on.
Wire to wire. All right, we'll see. Who will talk besides the president, Sean? Who will talk the most at the cabinet meeting?
Have they announced the subject?
Marco Rubio. It's going to be close.
Marco Rubio's not. He's wrong because he's not there. He's in Asia.
That's a trick question.
Well, no. All right.
Then the Hegseth.
Dan.
Or I think, look, Howard Lutnick. Considering
is he going to talk?
Lutnick. You stumbled into the correct answer. The correct answer in any question where the question is who's going to talk the most, where amongst the sample is Howard Lutnick, the correct answer will almost always be Howard Lutnick. Dan?
Oh, so I would say Scott Bessent.
He's a man of few words.
Yeah, I know, but is he gonna? I mean, if Hegseth talks, is he apologizing?
Hegseth.
What is he doing?
Hegseth may be muted. Yes. Vice President will be there. Don't know what else he's doing. As I said, Marco Rubio is headed to Kuala Lumpur. I assume he's leaving after the cabinet meeting. Maybe
that's by the way a lovely. I've done a few. I did APEC there. Beautiful.
Yeah. Beautiful. Senate is back today. Bibi's on the Hill, meets with the Speaker of the House at 11:45. Then with a bipartisan group of senators, including Chuck Schumer and John Thune, at 4. Gavin Newsom is in South Carolina on a 2-day tour sponsored by the state party there called On the Road with Governor Newsom. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And Macron is in the UK for a 3-day visit. The consumer credit report for May comes out at 3:00. All right.
Am I right that that's the first visit he's had since Brexit to London? Is that what I read today?
Probably.
That's amazing. It's been that long.
He like me feels that the Wi-Fi on the Eurostar is so spotty that he doesn't like to go. Again, if you've never raised your hand on this program, please do so today and ask a question or make a comment. If we don't get 3 people, the program's done, our final episode. All right. Last night, as we predicted, there was some open press conversation with the president and the prime minister of Israel, during which the president made so much news, we could spend the hour just talking that event. But here's the president on Ukraine. This is 103. Last night, changing course, veering away from MAGA.
We're trying to help out with a Biden-created monster, this whole thing that's happening with Russia and Ukraine. It's a horrible thing, and I'm not happy with President Putin at all. But this is something that would have never happened if I were president. This was a war that was never going to happen. And if I can stop a war, because I have an ability to do so, I'm disappointed, frankly, that President Putin hasn't stopped. I'm not happy about it either.
Mr. President, are you planning to send more weapons to Ukraine?
We're going to send some more weapons. We have to. They have to be able to defend themselves. They're getting hit very hard now. They're getting hit very hard. We're going to have to send more weapons. Yeah, defensive weapons primarily, but they're getting hit very, very hard.
So, Sean, is this just the latest zigzag as the president toggles between Putin and Zelensky? Or is he now all in on the Gingrich position, which is Ukraine must be armed to the hilt to bring Putin to the table?
A few things. One, I think that I've said this for weeks. Putin blew a chance. Trump wants to make peace, wants a deal, wants to end the death and destruction. And I think he gave a lot of runway for Putin, who abused that trust and an opportunity over and over again. I actually give Zelensky credit right now, where I think Zelensky, post that Oval Office meeting, has realized, okay, let Trump, I'm just going to say, I'm going to try your way. I'm going to try your way. And then constantly has reminded him, hey, I've been doing what you've said, but here's what's going on. And that's where we are now, where I think Trump has recognized, I wanted to do this. I still think this is part of the ultimate negotiation. And this is where people, what disappoints me about some of the folks in the MAGA movement is after President Trump showed the way in Iran, this is, again, he's basically, I think this is another attempt to bring Russia back and say, you know what? You don't want to play ball with me? Fine. I have another way to do this. And here's the other way that I can do this, by giving them more weapons to defend themselves. And then maybe you come back to the table. But two quick points that are important on this story. Yesterday, I was very clear about the status, the issue that we face as a country on munitions. And why is it? And I saw some people in the chat after the fact say, was it a problem or not? This morning, Axios is out with a story. Trump and his team are reluctant to part with many Patriot interceptors. He wants Europeans to do more. With stocks dwindling amid multiple ongoing war, there's an increasing concern among NATO countries about giving up munitions, particularly interceptors, more quickly than they can produce. Getting a Patriot missile isn't like going to Walmart and picking it off the shelf or going home, one Trump advisor said. It's not just Patriots, by the way. You've got Stingers, Javelins, 155 rounds that are all in short supply here in the United States. And I think for us to do an assessment of where we are as a country before we keep giving away, we've got problems. We don't have the defense manufacturing base that we did to get these things resupplied. So we're giving them our old and we can't manufacture the new. That is a problem that I think the president was having the DOD review, and it's important to understand. One other factor that I don't know how much it went into the president's decision-making, but yesterday the Chinese foreign minister said that China could not allow Russia to lose the war because the United States would turn on them. I think the president is sort of now realizing that these guys don't want a deal, that there's a much bigger play at hand, and finally is saying, great, I'll help the Ukrainians.
Dan, where are we now in Trump's trajectory?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, look, I think one of the things is you listen to that press conference and Trump said, like, he went back to Biden. The reality is now this is Trump's problem, in that Trump came into office saying, I want a peace deal. He started talking to Putin. He started saying to Putin, oh, like, we're going to have a timeout. You guys need to stop. And Putin just kept blowing through the stop sign, one after the other. That is Trump's created problem, number one. Number two, is this a real inflection point? I'm glad he now sees that we need to rearm Ukraine to defend themselves, because I've been saying for the last 2 months, Putin wants the whole enchilada. He wants Kiev, he wants all of Ukraine, and that was on the verge of happening on Trump's watch. So I think he's backed off. I think the last thing we have to put on the table, because we talked about this when he was nominated, I don't know what the heck's going on at the Pentagon. We said when he was nominated, he was not the most qualified person, and he did not appear to be the most serious person for that job. If you look at just in the last 24 hours, Hegseth has been humiliated, right?
Why? Why? What?
Because it's now pretty apparent, according to reports, that most of the administration was blindsided by the announcement that we were going to stop the shipment to Ukraine. including Marco Rubio, sounds like Susie Wiles. That is not a well-run building when you're blindsiding your own administration. Two, Sean, you're saying low stockpiles. Were there a bunch of reports saying that's actually not true on a lot of these weapons? So,
hey, Dan, guess what? Hold
somebody's wrong.
Hey,
I
yeah,
hear you.
so this is the Congressional Research Service report on mission supplies. That's not me. That's not Republican talking points. That's the Congressional Research Service at the request of
But
members of
Sean,
Congress
you also
analyzing
have
stockpiles.
You also have Pentagon officials telling various news outlets that's not true. So again, what's happening in the Pentagon? There are different messages coming out. The third is he threw Hegseth under the bus by saying, accordingly to Zelensky, I didn't approve cutting off the weapons. If this was a Democratic administration, people would say an S show of the ninth degree.
I think how they communicated that, I'll let them figure out internally how that happened. The bottom line is, though, what they discussed as the stand down rationale for what they did was to take stock of what we have and what we don't have in our country in terms
but
of.
Sean, who's they? Because Trump said I didn't sign off.
No. What I'm saying is what Parnell, the spokesman and the secretary said earlier was we need to pause to take a stock, literally, of what we have munition-wise in this country to make sure that we have the appropriate amounts. That's a good thing. The idea that we are whistling past the graveyard when it comes to our preparedness to defend our own homeland is something that should concern every single American. So
but then why are certain DOD officials saying that's not true?
I'm not aware that anybody did. I've not seen that. And again, as I said, this is not a new problem. This was something that 4 or 5 years ago was an issue. The Congressional Research Service documents it and updates it on a regular basis. We have a problem.
Sean, if I agree with Dan, if this were a Democratic Secretary of Defense, I think might have a different view about how bad this looks in terms of just running the building.
Look, again, as I said, I don't think that how they handled the messaging was probably done well because but it's
more than messaging. I mean, they basically said to our ally, who the president now wants to support, we're cutting you off without consultation and without consultation within the U.S. government, it appears. All right, we got to move on. Benjamin Netanyahu, I've often said, is as fluent as in American politics as he is in English. He understands how Donald Trump works, and nothing could make the president happier than for the Israeli prime minister to show up with a nomination letter for the Nobel Peace Prize. Good move, Bibi. Not as good maybe as a state visit from invited to a state visit with the King of England, but pretty close. So what are you guys putting up there now? You got okay. Go ahead and play that 105, please.
I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know. Wow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming from you in particular, this is very meaningful. Thank you very much, Bibi.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. It's a great honor.
And I think we can work out a peace between us and the entire Middle East with President Trump's leadership. And by working together, I think we can establish a very, very broad peace that will include all our neighbors.
I think Iran wants to meet. I think they want to make peace, and I'm all for it.
All right. I never read the chat, but I do glance at it. It's important on this platform that if someone criticizes the president or MAGA or the Republican Party, it's not always TDS. Sometimes it is, but it's not always. And people in the chat, I consider it smack, rolling from the chair. It's smack if you don't engage with people's ideas and you just deem them TDS. Thank you very much for your attention to this matter. Dan, two-part question. Should Donald Trump get the Nobel Peace Prize, and will he?
If Iran comes to the table, he should, and he will.
Whoa. Sean, should he, will he?
Well, remember, this is the second time he's been nominated. Pakistan's also nominated him for what he did between Pakistan and India. There's the Congo. I think he should be nominated. I don't have a ton of faith in these institutions. I believe that you might as well have the Hollywood Emmys and those are up there, the equivalent, in my opinion, on the international stage. So he should get it. I am hesitant, or I wouldn't be shocked in this world that he doesn't get it, but I just don't feel like that's the kind of person. I mean, look, when you look back at some of the people who literally, what did they give Barack Obama one because they thought someday he might do something good?
Yeah. All right, we'll see. All right, tariffs. We could talk for hours and hours about where we think tariffs are headed, etc. But nobody knows. Nobody knows. And as evidence that nobody knows, here's the decider in chief himself with one of the great Trump sound bites of modern era. 106, please.
I would say firm. No, I would say firm, but not 100% firm. If they call up and they say, would like to do something a different way, we're going to be open to that.
Yeah. So Dan is asked if the new August deadline is firm, and he says firm, but not 100% firm. Where would you put the odds that the August deadlines are not 100% firm?
What do you like to say? 0 being never, 10 mortal certitude.
Yeah.
9.9.
9.9. They're not firm. Sean, you want to go higher or lower than 9.9?
I'll stay. I'm gonna just go 9.8 because, but when that clip comes in just a shy second to when George Santos said, "I'm not Jewish, I'm Jewish."
Yeah.
It to me, look, I think that this is the beauty of Trump is that there's no, like he has strategic ambiguity. He will, it's not, people get all riled up. He's moving the deadline. He's changing this. He's changing that's him. It's always a negotiation. And I don't think anybody should be shocked with the fact that, like I said, there's a bandwidth issue. The countries that got in the queue to negotiate a better deal were spared. The ones that didn't take the time to do that didn't. It was a little bit longer of a list than I thought, but I mean, my guess is that India and Japan in particular, who are the ones that we actually have real trade with, because when you look at that, like Serbia's on the list. I don't even know that we trade, what we trade with Serbia. I'm sure it's like rare earth minerals or something, but I believe that those two they'll have some kind of a deal within the next week where they'll say we're going back down to the previous thing because they've agreed to do something. So none of this should shock anybody.
Can I ask both of you though?
Yeah.
Does Trump, and I'm being serious here, we joke a lot. I think he's backing himself into a corner. Does he pick a country to be Harvard? Meaning, I am going to put the screws to you to show everyone else this isn't Taco Tuesday. Because if not, at some point, the world's going to be like, all right, it's going to move the goalpost again.
He can temporarily, but if he gets the EU, and I'm hearing very optimistic things about the EU, everybody else is going to have to fall into line or they can be ostracized. But he doesn't want to make an example, I don't think, of the big, 18 countries.
Well, and that's why
but like one country, like
right,
one
but not in the big list. He can make a temporary short-term example of them, but then continue to negotiate.
That's what I'm saying, though.
But look at the countries that they put out yesterday that they sent them to, okay? With the exception of Japan and India, everyone else is a bit player. And that was what you're talking about, Dan. There was an idea of making it look big because there's 17 countries on that list. But with the exception of India and Japan, honestly, it was like Cambodia, Zimbabwe, Kazakhstan. It was
to get a headline before August 1st, right?
But
he got what he wanted.
I will say this. After the conversation we had on Hegseth, you think about, like, this is how Trump works. Like, Hegseth went out and did his thing. Who knows what really happened behind the scenes in terms of the coordination that did or did not happen. But think about it if you're Lutnick or Bassett or Greer and you're trying to negotiate a deal with a country and he's like, well, that's a firm date, but it's not a firm date, but yes and no, we're going to raise the tariff. This is just how he runs. And so there's a little bit of, sometimes when you reflect back on what we said about Hegseth, there might have been some more to that, and then they realized that it wasn't going well, and Hegseth's holding the bag, but it's not his fault.
Fair.
All right. DOGE continues to be discussion about whether there was too much cut. And of course, it dovetails politically for the midterms with the question of whether rural hospitals are going to close, et cetera. Veterans Department now has moved from like 80,000 proposed job cuts to down to 30,000, still a big number, but seemingly a reflection of a recalibration, either substantively, politically, or both, about whether these cuts as originally conceived are sensible. So Dan, is this going to be an issue between now and the midterms that the White House has to adjust on, or is this just like a short-term thing?
No, and look, I give the administration credit that they are very politically smart and they keep their ear very low to the ground. I think it's one of their great political attributes. We talked about when the real lives of real people are impacted, what would they do? And at least with the VA, there are an increasing number of stories of the wait times getting longer, customer service is getting worse, there's a shortage of nurses, just go on and on. That's not me. That is people calling members of Congress. When you have problems with the VA, that's what you do. You call your representatives to ask for help. And I think the White House is getting all this incoming. And the question is just between now and let's say the end of the year, how many changes are they going to override and fix? And look, good for them, right? Like, it's maddening we've had to go through this, but if they will undo a lot of this stuff and get back to serving people, you know.
Yeah. Here's what I would say. I've grown really weary of how the narrative about how much you care about something is directly correlated to the number of bureaucrats you hire. The VA has been plagued with problems for years. And so to just, Doug Collins is flipping over stones over there, trying to get to the bottom of a lot of things. And I've had a couple of conversations with Doug about this. I think they're doing a great job. They're focused on actually serving veterans instead of just hiring people for the sake of hiring people and not focusing on the mission at hand. So I
agree with you, but why have they decided that 50,000 people who are going to be fired aren't going to be fired?
Yeah, Sean,
well, no, because it has to do with, from my understanding, and I haven't dug deep on this one, but I think it has to do with the process. So they're using reductions in forces and other attrition measures to take care of the current workforce. I think we'll see how further it goes. But also remember, there's one thing for Elon Musk and some folks to look on the outside. Doug, who has served and understands the system very well, I think for him to go in and make a better assessment of what those functions are and where people are needed or not needed is right sizing the ship. And that's what
but here's
it's a pretty big overshooting of the runway.
I mean, it's not like you came in and said we're going to lay off 1,000 and actually now it's going to be 750 because it was 10 in this department. It was at
50,000.
80,000. Hold on a second. They never gave an explanation for why 80,000.
Correct.
Ever.
Just all vagaries.
Nothing was put out. It was a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Now it's 30,000. Dude, that's a huge.
That's the size of a large Iowa town.
Name me one Fortune 1000 company that would make a U-turn of that size, and the entire management wouldn't be fired.
But I will say this, there does need to be a further explanation. I will agree to that. But right now we're going off one story saying that this is the thing. I believe
not a story, it's an administration.
But the further explanation should come simultaneous with this announcement.
Fair enough.
But it didn't. So that's what Dan and I are saying. And again, I believe that this is going to be a huge problem for them, in part because of the substance, but in part because the press and the Democrats will never let it go. Everything that goes wrong in America is going to be attributed by the press and the Democrats to a DOGE cut. Everything. And the administration brings it on itself to some extent by saying, oh, we're going from 80 to 30. No explanation.
Look, in some instances, the Democrats are unhinged and unrealistic. And in some instances, folks, I see it in the chat. Get ready for it. They're right. They're 100% right.
Yeah. If I relied on the VA for my health care, I'd be super curious to know why they're going from 80 to 30. And if I cared about efficiency, I might be upset.
And by the way, why 30?
I want an explanation. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Again, if you've never asked a question on this program, please raise your hand if you want to keep the program alive. I do not see 3 new hands up. I'll tell you that right now. All right. Gavin Newsom, 107, is in South Carolina today, long way from South Sacramento to South Carolina. And I'm not sure what his constituents think about him spending 2 full days in the Palmetto State, but that's what he plans to do, traveling around to a lot of the redder parts of the state. I continue to believe he won't run in the end, but man, 2 days in South Carolina, probably if you were a betting person, if you were to pick one state that was likely to be in the first 4, South Carolina would be the most likely, I think, now of the other early states. Dan, where are you currently on Newsom? Front runner, top tier, not running? Where are you on him?
Top tier. We can debate whether it was good general election politics, what he did around the immigration stuff in Los Angeles, but it has catapulted him now into that top tier because Democrats feel like he stood up and he fought back. Again, we can debate, the substance of that. I think, one, it is interesting that more and more people are going to South Carolina. I don't know if Matthew Bartlett's on here. They are not going to New Hampshire.
So some have, a few have.
Well, they have,
Less.
but less. I think the two things that I'm keeping an eye on, one, what does Gavin say? Because prior to Los Angeles, on his podcast, he was making overtures on cultural issues and on immigration with that bill in California to actually go back in the opposite direction. So what does he say when he's traveling around the state? The second, Mark, you sent around earlier, I think it was a couple weeks ago, a poll about black voters. Newsom was fairly high, around 10. Other than Wes Moore and Cory Booker, I don't know where the black community in South Carolina goes. He's smart to be going into the rural areas and talking to them. So he's a serious contender. And, be curious how he does.
Sean, where are you on Newsom 28?
Well, A, I think he's running. B, I have to, I put him at the top of the list, but again, you're grading on a curve with the list. I will say what I find funny about this is politicians often find themselves in the wrong place when a disaster strikes. And it's just, you can't predict when things are going to happen and you run back, etc. It just happens. That's reality. That's life. I can't believe with LA still in turmoil, Karen Bass is in the news, a lot of issues with ICE going on there, that he thinks that it's okay to do this. It's amazing the lack of blowback that has resulted in.
I'm going to be super interested to see if there's something that happens in California, whether he races back 2 days out of the state to do just pure 28 politicking. Seems a little much.
Well, and I'll be curious how he talks about that there. Does he talk about states' rights, which is, where it all started in South Carolina? So I'll be curious.
All right. The Associated Press is reporting that Joe Biden's White House doctor is demanding some sort of insulation from certain types of questions so that he does not violate doctor-patient confidentiality norms when he testifies behind closed doors before the House committee investigating the Biden failed attempted cover-up. Sean, where will this end up? Will he testify? Will he testify with some protections? Where do you think this will go?
So first of all, this is something that's been noticed for a while. I think James Comer noticed this meeting 6-7 weeks ago. To pull this at the last moment says something. Like the idea that they didn't, he knows why he was being asked to come. He knows the subjects that are going to happen. And there is an easy way where he can, he's a doctor. This isn't the first rodeo that he's had. So there are things that are clearly within the realm of doctor-patient confidentiality that he can discuss. But it is fair game to ask him about his analysis based on public information that he made in a public document when he put out the president's, a bill, fitness for office is whatever he said, outstanding or something. Yeah. He can be held accountable for his own judgment, his public statements. I think I will be interested not just what he says, but whether Comer forces his hand. Yes. There's a series of aides that do this. I would argue it would be smart for him to do it. For Comer to press him to show up and see where he goes, because I've talked to some healthcare providers about this. There's clearly some stuff that you have to say that's doctor-patient confidentiality. I get that. I actually don't have a problem with that. But I do think there's plenty of stuff that he put in the public domain that he said or he wrote that he needs to be questioned on.
Well, now we're on the head of a needle on angels on the head of a pin, because I'm not sure where that line should be drawn or could be drawn. But Dan, do you think he'll testify with protections?
Yes, I think he ultimately will, but I think Sean said it well.
Sorry, Dan, I muted you accidentally.
That is a perfect subject to mute me on. I was just saying that Sean was largely right.
I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Look, I think he ultimately will testify because he has to. It's a horrific look to not do it.
Yeah. Where the line is drawn is going to be massive. For instance, does it violate the confidentiality to ask him, did you ever give him did you ever do a cognitive test, or did you ever do a imaging to see what was going on in his brain? And if not, why not? Does that violate it? I don't know.
Well, also, why did that Parkinson's doctor visit a couple times in 2024? They've never explained what he was doing there, why he was there.
Correct. He was taking the White House tour. All right, 2 more topics and then to your questions. I see 1.5 new hands up. not enough to save the show. So
This
again,
is one where if you get a kid, a
Again.
kid in the shot, it
yeah.
counts as a two.
Again, if you care about the show, please raise your hand if you've never asked a question before. All right, we could do the whole hour on the Jeffrey Epstein thing, along with Ukraine. It's another area that's dividing the president from MAGA. MAGA is up in arms about this. Laura Loomer is calling for the attorney general to resign, as is Eric Erickson. So,
well, just to be clear, because now that you've combined Eric into that, when I hear this narrative over again, MAGA is up in arms. Some in MAGA are.
yeah,
Jeffrey Epstein is an issue for a lot of people that I know who care about it. But I would say that if you look at MAGA as a spectrum, it is a 15% issue.
maybe, or maybe it's 35. I don't think we know, but I appreciate you're saying 15. I also wonder what happened to the FBI director and his deputy, who were conspiracy theorists numbers 1 and 2, and now are circling the wagon. So, Sean, if this isn't a conspiracy and a cover-up, why aren't they being more forthcoming about it?
I think, to be honest, that's a great question. I mean, there's this magic minute that disappeared on the tape that I think you don't have to be a forensic scientist to say, where's the minute and why is it out?
Yeah. You know how long it takes to sneak into the guy's cell and snuff him out? About a minute.
Right. I mean, so look.
But beyond that, to have Caroline say, well, the attorney general wasn't referring to a client list. She was referring to that's a plausible. It's a plausible thing, but they haven't explained it. They should be having a full explanation, taking questions.
But here's the problem.
Why not? If it's not a conspiracy,
the answer is,
why not?
Because there's two possible scenarios. One in there that they were sloppy on the floor at the beginning, and Pam and others used words like lists and et cetera, and that now they have to clarify them. So that's very plausible. The other plausible thing is that there's stuff in there that, and again, I think Caroline's doing her job because she can only say what she knows and what she's right. So that's her job. But as far as the DOJ portion of this goes, look, the bottom line is that there's a strong possibility that there's a lot of people on a list of some sort that you don't want anything to come out in some gory details from what I understand.
Dan, it's one of the only conspiracy theories I've ever believed in, but I believe in this one.
You really think?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, whether he committed suicide or not, I don't know. But
come on.
But well, I'm not sure. But I will say this: I firmly believe that there is a list, because that is how Jeffrey Epstein extorted people. And the number of CEOs who lost their jobs and marriages because they admitted to paying him $50 million, $200 million, and were photographed. The second thing is, where did Jeffrey Epstein spend almost all of his time? The Upper East Side of New York City and Palm Beach. Where is half of Trump's friend group from? The Upper East Side and Palm Beach. To say that none of those names, including potentially some people who sit around the table with him, it's unbelievable. I mean, of course they're hiding it, allegedly.
All right. We'll see what happens.
Yep.
I don't think this one's over. All right. Lastly, Gotham City Mayor race. Quick update. Again, then we're going to your questions. I see only 1.5 new hands up, so please, new people, raise your hands. Adams and Cuomo are both now saying publicly the other one should get out. You've got more money and more union support going to Adams, but they can't take comfort from the public polls, because the public polls are saying Adams has got a ceiling of 20%. Adams is not going to win. Now you've also got Mondami is starting to have meetings with business leaders, some this week, some next week, to try to build a bigger coalition. And he continues to make very high quality viral videos, such as this one. 108, please.
Every take is going to be... all right. That's slower than a tourist walks in Midtown. Okay. You want a photo, brother? Yeah. Yeah, let's take one. Yes, that's me. Yes.
Excuse me, I need to take a photo.
Yeah, we can take one. Thank you. I appreciate you.
I voted somebody that won.
Thank
something.
you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We're on our way. Thank you. Yeah, no worries. Thank you. How's it going, guys? Thank you. You gotta catch up to me over here. How you doing, brother? Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, my man. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Can I take one too, man?
Yeah, for sure. Hi. Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Ready? Okay. I think she's coming. Thank you.
I voted for
Thank
you.
you.
Yo voté por ti.
Yeah.
Yo voté por ti. My daughter, she said, voted for ti.
Thank you.
Give me one picture for
Yes.
my daughter.
Your back pocket.
My daughter.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
What
brother. I appreciate it.
pictures?
No. Let's go. Here, I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you.
Okay.
I got you.
Cámara.
Camera.
All right, Dan, after watching that, where are you on percentage chance he wins?
I'm still at 55. Look, I think it's amazing just how joyful he is doing all of this. I saw him the other day on the streets in New York. He continues to pound the pavement. As you say, he's reaching out and he's trying to kind of sand the edge to build relations. I think the interesting thing is you look on the other side, Cuomo and Adams literally were in the Hamptons this whole weekend raising money. They were not here. I have not seen much of Andrew Cuomo since the race in terms of a
Well,
public
he's talking about deciding in September whether to run all out or not.
Right. Adams, look, he has a day job, but he is not out as much. Look, I said this the other day. The question is, can two of them drop out and rally behind one? And will that one get out there? And if they don't, Mondani's odds are just going to are going to start to go up pretty quickly.
Sean, Dan's at 65. I'm at 80.
No, 55.
55. Sorry, 55. Steve Elmendorf and I are at 80. Where are you?
81.
81. All right.
Look, a couple of things on that. One, can someone put the link in the chat to Dan? Can send that to Jared Polis. That is how you do a video.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Oh, by the way, Kirsten Davis and Steve Elmendorf, thank you for agreeing last night.
I'm just saying, like, look, that's that guy. That's the kind of moments that you make you relatable. It was very authentic. That didn't even, dude, my kids could have done that on CapCut. This is not like, it's not hard, but it shows who he is and like letting that fly. The interactions that he has clearly don't, it doesn't look staged. It's real. I will also say this, just a pro tip from that last moment. If you ever want a picture with someone, have your phone ready, understand how to use it. That is probably like when I saw that, I was getting frustrated. Like if you want a picture, understand how to use your phone.
Yeah.
Fair enough. How he went with the flow was excellent. And that's the point, is that he was like, let me do it for you. He's, I may think his policies are nuts, but
most likable communist since Mao.
That's right.
All right, Vern, welcome in. Vern, are you new to this program? Unmute, please. Hey, are you new to the program?
I am new.
All right, Vern, you're number one to save the show. Thank you for joining. Very happy to see you. Your smile's as good as Mondami. So welcome in. Thank you for being joyful. Tell us where you are and what's on your mind.
I'm calling you. I'm online from Jonesville, Michigan. I'm a farmer.
What do you farm, sir?
Oh, actually, I do consulting work now.
Okay.
But I was born and raised as a dairy farmer. And I work with a lot of international companies. I do a lot of cattle export, finance work, real estate work.
Got it. Awesome. And where is that in Michigan? I'm not familiar with that town.
It's down here.
Got it. But still north of Windsor.
We're directly west of Windsor.
I bet you're a little bit north. I bet you are.
Windsor's actually south of Detroit.
I know it is. I know Windsor's south of 26 states, by the way. One of my best trivia questions. All right. Wow. Tell us what's on your mind. Thank you for being part of Two Way and for contributing to saving the program.
I've always been very impressed with your program. I love your program. I really missed you guys when you were gone last week. I've always wondered if I ever would have anything to contribute, and I think I finally do. And that's something that I think was missed last week a little bit, and that was when the Secretary of Agriculture and Trump spoke together about the H-2A visa program. We hear constantly about how we're going to lose all these illegal workers, and they're going to go back to wherever they came from, mostly Mexico and Central America, and that our food system is going to collapse and blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. But the truth is that we have this H-2A visa program that works really, really well. And I'm almost suspicious that Trump's strategy now, talking about granting amnesty for everybody, is just a negotiating position so he can expand and modify the H-2A program for...
Which one is H-2A? Is that just farmers?
It's agricultural workers, yeah.
Agriculture.
There's a couple of problems with it. Currently it's just a seasonal visa. I come from the dairy industry. H-2A workers don't work for the dairy industry because dairy's 365 days a year, and dairy workers typically don't go back, or they go back once every 3 or 4 years. I've been working with illegal immigrants since I was 18 and took a year off from my degree at Georgetown Foreign Service, of all crazy things, to work in Arizona. I'm real familiar with it. I see these people all the time. Anyway, I did a little research. Last year, there were 370,000 H-2A workers admitted in the United States. That could easily be multiplied by a factor of 10 if somebody got ambitious and worked it.
Yeah.
Just to give you a little further example, in my state of Michigan, to overcome the bureaucratic hassle of bringing in the H-2A workers, our State Farm Bureau organization started a separate company called Great Lakes Ag Services. And they centralized all the bureaucratic work to bring in workers from Mexico, so that a lot of smaller fruit producers could take advantage of the H-2A program. So anyway, that's my contribution.
Okay. All right,
I never
Vern,
hear I never hear anybody mention it.
Yep, super interesting, Vern. And I'll just say, in relate to immigration, there's a story today about how the president's gold card $5 million thing may not happen because it may not be legal. But Dan,
it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's just so we're clear, it's not legal.
Yeah. All right. They might get Congress to try to pass law. Dan, thoughts on Vern's excellent laying out of the realities of the American economy, not just in Michigan, but in plenty of other states, because every state's an ag state.
Yeah, I mean, look, in every state, I think what Vern just described in terms of, Vern, am I correct in saying that if you remove those 370,000 migrant workers, would the farm industry in Michigan kind of be materially impacted?
It'd collapse.
Okay, so I think whether every state is an ag state, every state has industries that have a similar story to what Vern is talking about, whether it's hospitality, construction, you name it. What I'd be really curious about is, what does Stephen Miller think? Because this is where, and I keep saying this, if Democrats can just admit the obvious, seal the border and kick the criminals out, this is the fight that is a much different fight. And you completely split the Republican Party in half.
So to your point, Vern, first of all, thanks for explaining this.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's, so I appreciate people like you that can come on and add this stuff to the dialogue, because I think it's important that we understand. I am a big advocate of legal immigration. And I think that's what makes our country great. And we are a country of laws. And therefore, when we do it the right way and we utilize labor the right way, that's good, in my opinion. There are some issues with certain visa programs that have to be addressed. Earlier this year, literally at the beginning of the year, hot debate between H-1B visas and whether or not, what we're doing in this country, not just to do this, but are we not training our own folks to do stuff the right way? Seasonally, I mean, you talk about the hospitality industry. There's a J-1 visa that's used for the hospitality industry. And whether it's the vacancies in Northern Virginia, where I am, or even in Rhode Island, where I sometimes am, restaurants are struggling with being able to get people to come in. Lifeguards are a big issue in the summer for a lot of folks who are on the shorelines or have pools. Those are filled a lot by J-1s. So I think part of this, and this is what frustrates me about where we are as a Republican Party right now, Trump has done a phenomenal job of securing the border, of getting things back, but Republicans need to seize this opportunity. And whether it's H-2A visas, J-1s, EB-5s, look at the visa programs and say, what is it that we need to do more of, less of, or tweak to get rid of fraud or to make them better. But this is our opportunity, because the false choice that we've been given on immigration is that people in this country illegally need to be given a path to citizenship or amnesty. That is not true. There is another way to do this. And it's a legal way where we enhance and strengthen our visa programs, tell everyone here's the system in which you can leave and then reapply under these programs. But this false choice that the media has given us, that there's, the only way to do this is to give everyone a pathway to citizenship, is just code word for the Dems want more voters.
No, stop.
Brilliant.
Stop. We don't.
Listen, from my point of view out here in Jonesville, Michigan, in the heartland, I think Sean's right. It doesn't have to be an either or proposition.
Yep.
The H-2A program is a non-immigrant visa.
Yeah.
There's no path to citizenship, and it works really well because the people that come in on that visa don't want to stay.
Yeah.
They want to go home.
They want to go home after they're done.
My neighbors that I've lived with, the Mexican guys that that come in, they work for 5 years, 10 years, they make a bunch of money, they send it all home, and then they go back to Mexico and retire.
Yeah.
They have no desire.
Yeah, most of them, not all of them. Not all of them. Vern, thank you. Super interesting. I hope you'll come back regularly. Go Blue.
Thanks,
I listen every day.
Sean, there are two things I've never seen. I've never seen someone who said they got out of line to vote or didn't go to the polls because of an exit poll result announced. And I've never seen any evidence that the Democrats want open borders because they want more voters.
Well, they explain. Then here's my thing.
Provide some evidence. Might be true.
Tell me, because Trump just proved in 6 months how easy it is for Biden and those guys to sit around and say there's nothing that we can do.
It doesn't mean they're doing it because they want voters.
But here's my point. At some point, explain to me what so you're either looking at them because you want them here for the census or because you want future voters. But there's no reason because the
answer
let me answer the question.
Yeah.
The simple answer is if you really cared about all this stuff, and my answer is at some point, why is the default give them citizenship? Why not? Isn't the default you have legal status?
Yeah,
where you get to stay.
Some Democrats support
no, they
legal
don't.
Status.
I don't know a single Democrat.
Some supported touchback provision. Turner, welcome.
I mean, Sean, it's a simple answer. It's three things. One, they hate Donald Trump and how far they think he went. Two, they think we're a land of immigrants, and like if they're being, if the Venezuelan others have problems, like. Come one, come all. Give us your hungry. Give us your sick. Like it's a very simple. It can be wrong.
I think
what's the third one,
down
Dan?
to the bottom line,
Dan,
is the only motivation is new voters. That's
you have no proof for it, though, Sean. You might be right, but you have no proof. You're just saying
losing Latino voters.
Yeah. Turner, welcome in. Turner, are you new to the show?
I'm brand new. My love for the program forced my hand up, despite my extreme reluctance to do so.
Turner, you're a savior. Where do you live, Turner?
Turner from Texas. I'm actually very close by the Kerrville flood that just happened.
Wow.
Really sad. Well, we're glad that you joined, and we're 2/3 the way there thanks to you. So thank you for joining.
Hey, I'm happy to do my part. You guys you're my favorite show, and so I forced myself to come up with a question, which is I thought of it because of the Racket News show I was watching yesterday evening with Walter Kern and Matt Taibbi, which I thought took an interesting exploration that you guys would be really great to answer into why they decided to leak the memo for Epstein. If you think about the fact that he just passed the One Big Beautiful Bill, this massive achievement, at least as far as the president is concerned. The Israelis are in town for 3 days, another supposedly big achievement, which is kind of odd how little media coverage that's getting, or the fact that they don't have any public events on the schedule. MAGA's in turmoil over amnesty or talk of amnesty. And then I've seen the idea floated that perhaps they did it over the 4th of July weekend, but it's just too big of a red shiny object to say that that's why they did it, to shuffle it under the rug. So I was wondering, you guys speculate on, why do you think they chose to throw this out here?
The timing of the announcement.
The timing of it, amongst all the big things going on.
Great question. I will say this, and then Dan, and then Sean. Sometimes it just chaos and happenstance that there's not a master plan in government. In my experience, more often than not, that's the case. But Dan, if there is a master plan here, what would it be in terms of timing?
I mean, Turner, it's a great question, and I don't know why they chose now. I think part of the challenge is when you trade in conspiracy theories and make a big deal and say, the Democratic establishment's hiding this because it's the deep state. Well, then when you get into government, you are the deep state. So you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Yeah. Turner, I'm trying to figure out why I actually do believe that part of it was. I mean, there's some aspect of, hey, everything's happening right now. We shoot it out and it gets the least amount of attention. Why wouldn't that
Well, I guess I know how in tune they are with MAGA, and I would assume that they'd be very well aware of, regardless of what the news was, but certainly to come out and say that there's no there was going to stop the show on all other topics,
Yeah.
at least for a large portion of the base there. I personally would think that we should be talking about immigration, amnesty, things that we were talking about before the Israel thing started happening.
I will say this: MAGA moves on. MAGA,
Well, sure,
MAGA
for sure.
brushes itself and moves on. So even though I think it's the bigger deal, more along the lines of what you're saying than Sean seems to, I do think that they'll move on because MAGA just likes the newest thing. As long as he's fundamentally adheres to the main principles.
So you guys don't have any thoughts though on what there's no attempt to draw attention from something else they might prefer people not be talking about?
No, I think it's summer and probably it was done and it was going to leak would be my guess.
Cool.
I think guess.
I think that's.
Yeah.
I just the other thing is in Trump world, when you go to him with a decision and say, Mr. President, da 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 da, I'd say probably 8 out of 10 times he goes, great, go get it out. Like the staff may have timed this, but I don't think he thought about it much.
Yeah. Thank you for almost saving the show, Turner. We'll see if you
Do my part. Love you guys.
Thank you. Grateful
Thanks,
to you. All right. Now Lester, I know, is new to this show. He was on Two Way Tonight last night. So the show is saved. Lauren, have you been on this show before?
Yes, I have.
Yes, you have. All right. Maybe we'll get time for you, but we got to save the show first. All right. So Lester was on last night. He's got his own political podcast, and he is quite a turner of phrases. So Lester, welcome in. Thank you for saving the show. What's on your mind for the morning meeting community?
You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I have a question. So I think that right now, this whole mass amnesty thing that, everyone's talking about, the fact that, the president seems to be fond of the idea for mass amnesty for, farmer workers and whatnot. Sean, do you think that that's going to fracture the Republican base or the MAGA base in the future by any chance? And I want to ask Dan the same question because I think that that would be a pretty big betrayal of the campaign promises because Trump, they did talk about mass deportations. They did talk about, carrying out the biggest, mass deportation operation in the entire, world. So what do you think that would do to Sean, Dan, and Mark? What do you think that would do to the MAGA base?
Great question, Sean.
Look, if there's one issue, I talked about Epstein earlier and how I think it's a vocal piece of this. Immigration is probably a 90 to 95 MAGA issue, and it may even be higher than that, but I'll say that there are 5% that probably. But if there's one thing that President Trump has been consistent on, aside from tariffs, it's immigration. And I will tell you that any talk of amnesty that results in a path to citizenship would be a hard no for a lot of people. I think it would destroy MAGA. There's one thing that everybody kind of is on board with. It's secure borders and a reform of our immigration system. So any amnesty discussion that led to that, I think amnesty can take forms in many ways, like, well, hey, we're not going to punish you, or you could leave and do the, back in the day, it was you leave the country for a year, you pay a fine or something like that. That's one thing. Anybody that was immediately given citizenship, I think you would crater in minutes.
Dan.
Yeah, shout out to my group chat colleague, Emma Jo Morris, who has said on our show last week that she thought Steve Bannon was going to look very seriously at running for president. I'd be really curious how J.D. Vance will handle this issue. He's very close to Silicon Valley. He's close to the business community. He's very politically smart. How does he try to thread the needle? Because I think the problem is, Lester, you said it. Trump ran his mouth with this, like, we're going to deport all 20 million people, right? Like, it was simple. It was neat. It was clean. There was no nuance. There was no carve outs. There was no nothing.
Well, to be fair, he didn't give an exact number, but he did make it seem like it was going to be.
Well, I actually believe he did throw out the 20 million number. And he was like, we have to, like, we have to save our country. The problem is, the reality of this is every state has what I think the previous gentleman described. And he's also a smart businessman who cares very much about the economy and not harming industry. Yep. And so governing is a you-know-what.
Yeah.
Lester, thank you. Grateful to you. Please come back. Enjoyed having you on. All right, we have a moment to squeeze in Michael Graham with his granite state delusion.
I got a feeling I'm going to hear about this.
To try to convince us, all the many Democrats who are betting their lives on the prospect that New Hampshire will be first in the nation.
Yeah, will you be the first primary?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, because it's in our state law. So if they're going to have something,
yeah, you'll have some Potemkin primary.
No. First of all, I just want to say something that Sean said about illegal immigration. He is so right. What people have never understood about this issue, I don't think, from my years in talk radio, it's about fairness. People hate the idea that it's not fair. It's that thing where you see someone cut the line at the movie theater. It drives you crazy.
Yeah.
On New Hampshire, my question for Dan is, so New Hampshire is going to go first by law. We have the Democrats already showing up. Pritzker was here. Klobuchar had to leave early because of that murder. Ro Khanna is coming back. He's been here several times. I think it's a great place to come if you're a Bernie-friendly candidate. The question is, do you want a Bernie-friendly state to go first? I think this talk about we have a state with a lot of black voters in South Carolina, we've got a state with a lot of Hispanic voters, whatever, in Nevada, we've got the white people. I don't think that's looking this right. I think the question for your party is, what kind of nominee do you want? And that's one reason why they kept Biden out in 2024 is a combination of health, and he's not the kind of candidate that they like. He came in 5th in 2020.
Well, I mean, look, it's an interesting question because John Kerry also won it. It saved Hillary Clinton, right, against Barack Obama. So on the one hand, Bernie Sanders has run strong. On the other hand, kind of moderates have fared better up there than at least they have in Iowa. So I think the argument within the party is I mean, and as you know, it's not the most diverse state. I'm a New England boy and spent summers up there. Like, I love New Hampshire, but I don't know. Mark, you've said you don't know who's going to go first.
What I'm trying to figure out is who's going to decide. Is the chairman going to decide on his own? Is the chairman going to decide? There's a committee.
The candidates are going to decide. The
candidates
are going to decide. The only reason why 2024 happened the way it did is because you had an incumbent step on it.
The candidates will decide to some extent.
Democrats are going to have events in New Hampshire. So let me explain what's
there'll
really
be
happening.
Sanctioned events.
Democrats are going to have events in New Hampshire, and candidates are going to show up, and cameras are going to follow them, and that's all that matters. It's all showbiz. There's no delegates. No one cares about that. It's showbiz. Republicans are going to come when they get permission from Trump, and that's what's interesting.
New Hampshire,
Democrats are showing up.
New Hampshire will be diluted if other sanctions. Listen to me. If other sanctioned states are right after New Hampshire, okay, and you can preserve your window all you want. But if other sanctioned states, candidates are more likely to go to the sanctioned, meaning approved, not punished, the approved states, they'll go there. And that will dilute, not fully eliminate, as the president would say, but that will dilute the influence of New Hampshire. How much it will influence in New Hampshire is an open question.
Look, the first two states, look, Michael's right. This is all about perception. You don't go to Iowa because you think that there's a ton of delegates. Frankly, was it Buttigieg won? Didn't Buttigieg win Iowa?
By a little bit belatedly.
And no one gave him the bump. He didn't get the bump. And same thing with New Hampshire. You go to New Hampshire for the press coverage and the bump or the non-bump. Right. Who shows up and who doesn't? Everybody who tries to play this game with I'm going to go to these states and not this state doesn't usually end up winning. The other thing to note is this. To Michael's point, the way the process works in both parties is New Hampshire will go first because the Secretary of State has nothing else to do but to make sure they go first. And they live in the Bill Gardner world of you're protected.
It's a great world.
But here's the deal. Once it happens, then the candidate at the convention will decide whether or not those delegates actually get seated or, I mean, it's all a game.
It is all a game, but I'm telling you, you're assuming too much about.
I agree with Mark.
You're assuming too much about where the candidates will go.
Halperin,
you're assuming too much because there's no front runner, and people can cherry pick if it's an unsanctioned state.
Yeah. Candidates
can cherry pick, and your party is too left in the primary. So if you're a moderate, you may not want to go there.
Well, listen, that's the question for Dan is what are you going to do to craft someone who can win in the Mondami moment? Because Mondami's going to crush it. He's a 100% lock.
Maybe he'll come up and run there. We got to stop. Michael, come back tomorrow. We got to come back. We got to stop.
Journalists are lazy.
He wasn't.
Journalists are lazy. They are lazy.
They
are lazy, and they may not come up there.
They're
too
only
far
going to
away.
come here.
No, we'll see.
They-
You're not-
yeah, just
we'll see. We'll
for
see.
the record,
2028 special.
Madami became a citizen in 2018. He wasn't born here, so we do not have to worry about that. I will say that
he can run and challenge the constitutionality of it. Sean, what do you have on tonight?
I'm excited. Tricia McLaughlin, the Assistant Secretary of Department of Homeland Security. Obviously, a lot going on in Texas that we'll talk about the response there. DOGE cuts, and the media narrative around that. And then obviously a lot going on with ICE. There was a shooting yesterday in Texas, in McAllen, Texas. And then Karen Bass saying some wacky stuff out in LA.
All right, 3 two-ways this evening. First, 6 o'clock. Lawyer, political strategist, journalist Aaron Parness will be my guest on Two-Way tonight. If you're not familiar with Aaron, you'll want to join. If you are familiar, you'll really want to join. He's a brilliant guy, super fascinating. Moynihan Report is on at 7 tonight. And then at 7:30, Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong and I back with Cancer Decoded. Please be part of this growing community. Callie Means, advisor to the Trump administration on health matters, and with special insight into cancer, close to Secretary Kennedy, and a special government employee will join us. So please join us tonight at 7:30. Please bring your questions and concerns. Again, Cancer Decoded is meant to inform and to comfort and to build the largest community ever built around those who have battled cancer or are battling it now. And we will be back in 23 hours with this program. So we hope to see you then. Turner, tell everybody you saved your favorite show. Have a good day, everybody.
Yeah.